I'm Tim, the Brand Weaver, and this is Branding for Breweries, the podcast that helps you grow your brewery, build a better brand, and connect with more drinkers. Each week, I'm joined by the brightest minds in the beer world, sharing practical tips to help your brewery stand out and sell more beer. Let's get stuck in.
What up, 24-hour party people? 'Tis I, Tim the Brand Weaver. We are back and we are chatting about wonderful things that will make your brewery thrive, do incredible, wonderful, game-changing things, bring more drinkers into your tap room, get more people requesting your beer online, and whatever else it is that is required to get liquid to lips at the end of the day. And as the show intro says, I bring the brightest minds from around the globe to your earballs and eyeballs to help you to do just that. Thrive and survive. Well, more than survive, do much better. And today is no exception. I am joined by the incredible Ollie. Now, I've written down his past job title so I can say it correctly. So Ollie is the former director of cult indoctrination internationally at Liquid Death. So Ollie is going to come and talk to us today about the wonderful brand Liquid Death, what it did as a brand, how it got into so many places, and what breweries can learn from it. Because I really love the brand. I love what they've done. I love what they've activated with in the US, and it's been a phenomenal rise to success over there. So let's bring Ollie in, let's have a chat, and let's learn a little bit about what you can do to improve your brewery's engagement and reach through some crazy tactics like Liquid Death used to. Ollie, hello, mate.
Hey, Tim. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
You are very welcome, man. I have been so excited for this chat, so thank you so much for joining me, buddy. Super appreciated.
Thanks, man. Quite an intro as well. Appreciate it.
Like I say to all my guests, I have to hit a certain level of energy and excitement at the intro, so then we keep that energy going through it. Otherwise, it's a snooze fest, and we don't need that for the listeners because we want them to stay
That's
engaged.
it, man.
Ollie, my man, could you please just give us a bit of an introduction in a blind date-esque fashion? What's your name and where'd you come from, love?
Yeah, so I'm Ollie Russell Cowan. I'm originally from the UK, from London, and I've now based over in Portugal. I've been here for about 6.5 years. And yeah, as you kindly mentioned, I used to head up lifestyle marketing for Liquid Death internationally. Prior to that, I had an events and festivals platform called Rad Season, which was like a media event company for finding cool events and festivals around the world. And yeah, now I help brands basically with their lifestyle marketing approach and brand strategy and various other things. And that's me.
In a nutshell, that's me.
Yeah.
And Liquid Death, dude. Because we were talking about this offline when we first connected. Like, I know about Liquid Death because it was targeted to get in front of people such as myself. Cool, trendy, very attractive with a beard and a hat. But for those people who might not be as cool and trendy or bearded or hat wearing as me, Ollie, can you give a bit of background to Liquid Death and what it is before we get stuck into chatting about it?
Sure. So Liquid Death started off as a water brand over in the US. Their first thing that they did was that they had still water and sparkling in a can, in a pint-sized can, which resembled more of a craft beer than a water. And the whole idea was to basically disrupt the water market and do something a little less boring and stagnant than all these sort of plastic water bottles that you would see on the shelf. So they kind of took that, I guess, in essence, initially that like punk rock, do it yourself, like skate mentality to the brand. And yeah, the whole thing was sort of built around entertainment and humor. And it's sort of then kind of gone on from leaps and bounds into various different things, whether iced tea, sparkling flavors. And now I think they're doing like energy drinks over in the US as well.
Yeah, and so many wicked kind of like products, and I don't know if anyone's seen it online, but there's the Spotify Earn now that Liquid Death have kind of got involved in. It's just so many cool activations that I really love. But from your perspective, Ollie, we've got loads of, well, I hope we've got loads of breweries listening, if not now, later on in the future. Yes, this is Tim from the past talking to you in the future. Hello, everyone. But yeah, if they were to take a couple of leaves from the playbook of Liquid Death, like what are some of those biggest lessons that you'd say as a small upcoming brand who want to kind of make a name for themselves, want to get known, what should they be doing and what should they be thinking?
I mean, there's a couple of things, I guess, to unpack with that. I mean, the first is sort of like knowing who you are as a brand and what you stand for, and that kind of, in the case of Liquid Death, it's sort of like looking at the founder, like Mike Cesario, incredible brand marketer, worked for some pretty large agencies prior to starting Liquid Death, and just sort of had this vision of doing something with a brand that was a little bit different. That, like, how are you going to kind of build out a following? How are you going to get people involved with it? And it sort of becomes more than the liquid, and sort of what's inside it. Like, how are you going to kind of build that brand out? And I would sort of say, like looking at that, like what everyone is sort of doing, like what really resonates with you, or with the, like, with the people that, like, that founding team that are building out the brand, building out the product. You know, what are they into? And in the case of Mike, he was, you know, loves comedy, loves horror, uh, loves action sports, skating, metal, rock. It all kind of like weaved into it. And then as the brand got bigger and bigger, it sort of, I guess, gave different opportunities and ways into other scenes. But initially, it was kind of targeting people that were into, you could say, fairly, like, were into similar things. And then that's something that we can, yeah, we can go through in a bit. But yeah, it's kind of targeting that core audience. But initially, it's sort of like, if you're building it for yourself, then it comes across real, instead of, oh, I'm going to target it for something completely different that you don't really know too much about.
Yeah. So on that point, a lot of brewers that I talk to, like, brewing is their identity. Like, everything beyond that, they're kind of like, well, that's not overly exciting or interesting. You know, what I do is I create good liquid. What would be your advice to someone like that when you're like, you finding those other aspects? Obviously, you talk about comedy and the skate rock and the punk and the metal and stuff. Where do you start digging, or who do you lean on to help for that kind of thing?
I mean, I'd almost sort of say, like, you can kind of go into, like, what is the story behind that, and going, okay, well, like, you know, like, why did they do it in the first place? Really kind of think about what makes it unique. And, you know, like, I guess in Liquid Death's case, everyone's like, oh, okay, well, it's targeting this, like, this rocker, or, you know, people that are interested in action sports or in metal. The whole thing was just built around, like, people that got the humor. And that doesn't matter, like, if you're like, I don't know, I've got a 9-year-old, he found it hilarious, like, when he was sort of like 5 or 6. Like, whether you've got, like, little kids or people 80, if they kind of connect on that same thing, that's the, I guess, the main driver of, like, why should people care about what it is, you know? And it's that story where you feel that there's some kind of belonging there.
And you mentioned early on, like, the whole entertainment aspect side of things, that it's not just a liquid brand, it's an entertainment brand. Why is that element so important in terms of, like, connecting with your audience?
I think now, like, with everyone just being so distracted in in terms of having this crazy computer in your pocket, just being pulled in so many directions, making a product, or making brand, service, company, whatever it may be, trying to get people's attention when you're competing across so many different things. If someone sort of gives you 10-20 seconds of their time on social, that's quite a lot when you're just being slammed with, like, with all this information coming in. So the more entertaining that you can make that, and not really, like, being pushy or too salesy, that then people will engage with your content. Like, in the case of Liquid Death, people were almost like waiting, you know, a couple of years ago, like, they'd be waiting for what then they're going to do next, whether that's, like a Yeti like coffin cooler, or like the Elf Beauty cosmetic, all these crazy campaigns that they had. That's something that um is pretty interesting. So I think it's sort of like looking at what makes your brand or your company entertaining, and just doubling down on that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, and like with Liquid Death, it was all based around that humor comedy element. Whereas with another brand, you sort of think, okay, well, it might be the outdoors, or it might be like resonating in a different way.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because like you say, humor it's subjective, right? It's only going to appeal to a certain bunch of people. But was the metric for Liquid Death, like, if we find it funny, then that's the what we go with ultimately, because you're not trying to impress anyone else, you're just trying to like tickle the funny bone internally.
I think it's like you want to try and like selfishly like tickle you're doing it for yourself, but then you're also kind of like looking at it going, well, if my mates find it funny, if I find it funny, other people, like, maybe they do as well. I mean, like recently, you hear so many like pitches, or like whether it's sort of from brands, or just different companies that are doing all these amazing things. If they sort of come up with an idea and they're like, okay, well, what do you think of this? If I smirk, or like if there's something where I feel like, okay, like this is going to hit, because it's creating some sort of emotion, that's then what is like what resonates, and what's powerful is like is having that reaction. If there's no reaction, if you're just like, meh, if you tell it to your friends down the pub and they're like, that's pretty funny, or you should go ahead and do this, lean into that. And obviously, test it out first. Don't just kind of jump straight into these things. But yeah, if it's for you and for your community and your friends, if it feels right, go with your gut on that.
Because I've had someone who left a comment on Instagram, and they've said it's about, there was a Shopify Masters interview. Founder talked about going all in on a bold identity from day one, but how do you know when a brand idea is strong enough to like fully commit to it, versus like, that might not be the one? Like, any pointers in terms of going, yeah, that's a bold idea, that's going to resonate?
I think, I don't know, I saw a lot of this for like April Fools, right? Everyone kind of comes up.
I was going to say, it's got like really bad Liquid Death marketing ideas all across my Instagram page on April the 1st.
Or genius. I mean, some of them were quite good, and I'm like, okay, well, why don't you actually like? Why didn't you do that? I mean, I saw one of like, it's like a beer keg in an office, which is all like branded up, and it was like, oh, we're just joking. I was like, well, you shouldn't be joking. You should be doing that, because it's good. And I think kind of giving that creative freedom, especially if you're a small team and you can, sort of test it amongst yourselves. But yeah, just take a punt on some things. And, if it doesn't feel right, if you're like, oh, we crossed the line here, and then, you test that out with other people, then maybe don't. But if they're like, no, I think we could be onto something here. Has it been done before, or like, is it a variation of something that has been done? I wouldn't feel like too pressured to that. If it's obviously copying something, especially something that someone else is doing in the industry, maybe leave it. But if it's sort of like looking around of like what's been done in the past, and like, like whether that's people like now doing stuff around that, I don't know, were born in the 90s, but they're doing stuff for like 80s nostalgia. I mean, they weren't even around then. They've got no idea what it was like, but they're just like, oh, this would be cool. We do some neon stuff. And, if it sort of feels right, then go with that.
And like I kind of mentioned in the intro a little bit, that Liquid Death, it wasn't everywhere, right? It was in targeted specific locations for the right people. And something I experience a lot when talking to brewery owners, it's like, we make beer for everyone. And I do challenge it. It's like, I don't think you really make beer for everyone. But in your mind, what's the benefit of knowing like you have a niche group of people and then going about getting in front of those people and not worrying about everyone on the planet?
I think kind of going really deep early on instead of going wide and broad would be the approach. You kind of look at this and go like, you know, for Liquid Death's case, the remit that I had was like, okay, we want to replicate this around the world in all these different markets, and how are we gonna how are we gonna do that? What approach do we use? Okay, we'll take that playbook of what they initially did in the US, which was we're going to target dive bars, we're going to target skateboard shops, skate events, specific genres of music scenes, rock, metal, punk, and like sort of barbershops as well, and really kind of home in on those places, and then where like who's influencing the cool kids, you know, like where are they hanging out, what are they doing, you know, in the city there's always some area, no matter like where it is, where that particular scene or those people, like where are they hanging out and what are they doing, and then off the back of that then you can expand out. And it was always the case of like, you know, they wanted to get it in as many hands as possible. But at the beginning, there's got to be this sort of, I guess, fandom created around these core people that really get the brand. And in Liquid Death case, I mean, they would like tattoo it on their skulls. You know, I think they had like 500 tattoos. It was wild. Of like people like getting the logo, getting the brand tattooed on them, and it's a sort of, you know, like back in the day, people were doing the same with the monster claw, right? And that was sort of speaking to them because they were addressing those people that they knew, say in that case, that would be like, you know, into NASCAR or action sports, and yeah, trying to figure out that where that is, like who are the people that then fit those scenes, and going all in on it.
And I suppose that's easier if we like circle it back to if you kind of build the brand out around your own passions and interests and you're trying to appeal to other people like you, you're going to naturally know a good place to start, I suppose, because it's the places that you know about or want to hang out or the people you want to get in front of, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the worst thing you could do is try and basically mirror or copy things that other brands are doing, looking at people that or scenes that you have no idea about. And I'd put my hand up and be the first one to go, okay, well, look, I know that the brand wants to get into gaming, but I don't know anything about that. And it's pretty risky for me to even try and pretend. And you just end up looking like a bit of an idiot if you're sort of saying, okay, yeah, well, like that you know about that world. Because when people are really invested into something and they're spending a lot of their time doing it, then sort of like coming across as an outsider trying to sort of say that, you know, that you understand it, you've got no idea. But getting the right people involved that do understand, that then definitely works. So you're sort of saying, okay, well, we're working like on whatever it may be. Could be sort of people that are like YouTube creators, but then if you're not one yourself, then find people that know that community inside out, and then try and partner up with them.
Yeah, you've got to have that bridging mechanism. It reminds me of that SNL sketch, the Steve Buscemi one, where he like dresses up as a young kid and it's like, yeah, what's going on, fellow young people? It's
Yo,
like that backwards thing.
Yeah.
And so this is like, we've talked about kind of bringing a brand to the market, but would you say it's the same approach maybe for a legacy brand that's been going around for a while? Because, you know, in the UK, we're so lucky because we've got cask beer, which not a lot, it doesn't really go far beyond the UK shores a lot, but it is a heritage brand at the end of the day. And a lot of conversations I have with, you know, cask bros is like, well, we don't want to be the cool kid because it doesn't feel right. It's kind of gimmicky and cliched. So, you know, from your experience, very different to the likes of a Liquid Death, which is cool, trendy, alternative, and rebellious. Are there still similarities that something like a legacy brand can hold on to like build a community around?
100%. And you can kind of like look at this and go, okay, well, like play into the legacy, and don't try and, I wouldn't say like you'd have to like reinvent it to be like the next thing, you know? It's really kind of, I would say like not really taking the mick out of your audience, or your buyers or your customers, that people would like, you know, that have supported it for a long time. It's sort of, okay, well, what do they care about? And how do we connect with them on a genuine level, instead of sort of trying to attract something that the brand isn't really in the first place.
Mm. Yeah, and it's, you see so many breweries who do try it and try and be the cool, funky kids. And you're like, it's not. I just don't know. I don't know if it's going to resonate.
Yeah.
Haven't yet, but you know, never know. You never know. So, what about then? Like you say, Liquid Death had a number of releases, a number of different kind of, you know, phases that they went through to launch products and bits. But it was never just about like, oh, here's an Instagram post and here's an update on an email newsletter. Like it had, to me, it seemed like a massive ecosystem in terms of building awareness.
Mhm.
From a small brewery perspective, what can they learn? Like, what would your recommendation be to like really drive a big awareness and buzz around a launch?
So around that, I mean, I would sort of say like picking a narrative, picking a story around that launch, if they're going to be launching like a new product, a new SKU, for example, and ideally doing something a bit unique. In like Liquid's Death's case, it was coming out with something like physically tangible, like whether that was some quirky bit of merch, or a partnership with someone that could then tap into maybe a broader audience, or something a bit different. And then at the beginning, it was sort of like right at the beginning, it was doing things that worked within those scenes. So, you know, whether that was like action sports brands, you know, musicians, athletes, influencers, like from Metallica to Tony Hawk. But these can be done on like smaller scales, like, and I would say like just sort of releasing an email, sending it out, and then coming up with the finished product. Try and stream. You can make more out of it, especially now, like with what can be done on AI, and how you could sort of like build up this story, and really kind of, you know, have it staged out, and then something at the end that's cool that people want to talk about.
And what about kind of like overcoming that fear aspect? Because I think you could be like, oh, you've got this newest, you know, new SKU coming out, and you could be bold and collaborate with this particular person or that particular business, but they're going, it doesn't feel right. I've not seen a brewery do something like this before. Because there's always that, especially in the brewery space, I find there's a comfort blanket in going, well, if another brewery's done it, it's okay because they've kind of tread the path and we know it's kind of acceptable. What's your advice to kind of like stepping away from the safety blanket and trying to reach out and do something a bit bolder?
I would say like look and take influence from other industries, because sometimes like no matter what it is, like whether it's in brewing or outside, it can become, yeah, it's almost like that safety net. It's kind of like, I don't know, I see this like quite a lot with people do like wrap ups of the month, and every brand does them. And I was like, well, just because they all do it doesn't mean that you have to as well. So don't have to follow the herd. You can do something a little bit different, and that's okay, and sort of take inspiration by what's going around, and potentially things that have sort of even been done before that was amazing, putting a different spin on it, or looking at other industries. And yeah, I think just going with your gut, and launching it, and not sort of over procrastinating,
Mhm.
because then, you know, if it doesn't hit as well as you thought it would, there's always the next time, or the next time, you know.
Yeah.
So
I've seen it a lot in the social media marketing stuff. I think we touched on it. It's like, you know, there's either the doodle aesthetic or the baby photos on Instagram and stuff. And I suppose in my mind that cheapens a brewery's brand, because it just goes, well, there's nothing original about that because I've now seen that 25 times. It's far better to try and, like you say, have a leap of faith, put something different out there, and if it doesn't work, okay, fine, that was once. It's okay. You're not going to like shut the brewery doors just because you put a bad Instagram post out.
exactly. Yeah.
So what do you reckon, what would be a good approach for a brewery when they go, okay, so we want to do something different. We've identified our audience. We know, it's going to be based around fishing. Sod it. We're going to be a brewery for fishermen and fisherwomen. Actually, that's a terrible idea with the whole James Watt analogy in North Atlantic fishing boat. Let's find something else. Cycling. That's good. Let's go for a cycling brewery instead. What are those kind of tick boxes that you go, right, okay, you're going to be a brewery for cyclists. You've got packaging, you've got your social channels. Like, what are all the kind of touch points that a brewery needs to think about that they might not necessarily think about from day one?
So yes, like how can you get involved, or how can you play across that whole ecosystem? Say in this case for cycling, right? So how are you going to turn up to these events, whether you're sampling, whether you're partnering with them, where it feels genuine, it feels real? And is that because the founder cycles, or someone within, or like people within the company, if they're really into it, maybe they're then driving that initiative? And so that would sort of be community events at one, sampling, gifting to local cyclists in the area, for that sort of post beer race, or even if they're sort of weekend warriors but they're super passionate about it, it doesn't have to be like these massive influences. They can sort of be like people with a smaller followings. But all of that, then it just building out the brand is something that it isn't instant, it isn't overnight. It takes a bit of time, but it just the word of mouth then just gets stronger and stronger, and that then grows, and it's sort of tapping into those scenes. Maybe it's doing something with cycling brands, so you can look at brands and partnerships within the community, you can look at events, and then you can look at individuals. And sort of how I kind of approach this, like from a lifestyle marketing perspective, is those three buckets. So looking at the people, looking at events, and looking at partnerships, and having someone that understands, in this case cycling, understands the scenes. They'll know like what they should be getting involved with, who they should be partnering with, and then doing it that way. And like almost in the case of like Athletic Brew, when they were kind of doing it with running, like when they first started in the US, and they were kind of just showing up at all these running events before like the whole fun run thing, and like brands getting involved was like a must-have kind of tick box. They were doing it like from day one.
What about for those smaller breweries who maybe have, they don't have someone who does marketing, they don't have someone who has a full-time sales or something like that. They're 3 or 4, maybe 5 people at most. Like, and they can't afford to be sending someone out to an event or handing out, cans left, right, and center to those more influential figures within the scene. What can they still do that's going to like give them a bit of a leg up and start that conversation going?
I'd say do it somewhere that is a bit smaller scale. So kind of like looking at something where, is it sending like a sample case to 1 or 2 people, or like a handful of people within that scene, more local based. So instead of going, okay, we're going to go full national, and we're going to do everything, and we're kind of going to get it out everywhere, just scale that back and go, how can we do it where we just target like specific people within that area, and then sort of grow it from there. And that normally comes like from that founding team. I mean, I know when like most sort of brands are starting, they don't have these massive budgets. So it's like, how are you going to get involved? And that's why it's sort of, if it comes back to something that you're passionate about, or you like, or maybe your partner is, or your kids, whatever it may be, that then comes across, and it makes it a lot easier, instead of going, oh, okay, we're going to target and we're going to be a brand for X, and not having like any real kind of feeling or connection with it.
And I was going to say, like, how do you know it's worked? Like, because it's quite hard to, everyone talks about return on investment and all those wonderful corporate phrases, but when you're sending something out and you're only doing a couple of things, what can you really hope to happen out of something, like sending out a bundle to someone? Like, what's the best result from it?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, how is that all going to drive sales? So you want you're building up the brand awareness and the brand equity and people knowing about it, but at the end of the day, it's like the bottom line is like, how is that gonna correlate? How can that be measured? And as the sort of brand awareness grows, that could be a case of like opening up doors or getting a new on trade account, or more people subscribing to buying it online from you. And there's various ways, but it's sort of giving that time where it isn't going to be like an overnight thing. It takes a while.
Hmm. So, in your mind, would it be better for a brewery to send a box out to someone who is influential but not directly in the beer space versus like a beer content creator? I've been lucky enough to receive various beers left, right, and center that I put up on Instagram and things. But do you think it would have a better impact for them to go, actually, this is a quieter space that beer isn't normally promoted in?
I think so. I mean, like I would look at it, if I was going to do it or get involved, I would sort of look at something and go, okay, well, where are these areas where, like, to give you an example, like Celsius, the energy drink company, they were kind of like plodding along and then going up against like the Red Bulls and the Monsters of the world, and then eventually they were like, okay, well, there's a bit of a gap here with gyms, and we can get it in gyms, and we can target the fitness community instead of kind of going down that route and competing, bumping heads with them at every single like location. So finding that area where, yeah, exactly what you said, like maybe there is a gap there, and it's little less like it's not as hard of an area to get into. The one massive advantage that Liquid Death had was its water, and if you're a touring musician, or you're a sports event, everyone drinks it. Like, period, right? Everyone needs to drink water. So they had this like huge advantage going, like, if we're going to send it to bands, like for gigs, to athletes, to events, like they need water there, otherwise they're buying it themselves. Yeah, that was something I would suggest.
Nice. Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. I can't, there's a Red Sea, Blue Sea analogy somewhere, but I can't remember what that is because I'm not that intelligent. But yeah, just go where people aren't like crowding up your space and you probably work out better for you. Going to places where your people are, what about pitfalls? Because obviously we talk about Liquid Death fondly. In the States, it's doing phenomenal things. In the UK, it hasn't had as much traction.
Yeah.
So what can the listeners like take from that?
I think in that case, it was sort of like, how is it really localized and like properly geo-targeted in terms of like the messaging and the involvement and the scenes. Liquid Death's case, they were sort of like trying to roll out like global, like US campaigns where like the people in the UK or Europe, they didn't even know who some of these like people were, right? Mm-hmm. So whether that's like so on like these like the smaller scales and the localization of it, really thinking about like how can we have ownership of like one scene, one area, and then kind of build out from that.
I suppose it's not as much of a big problem for the kind of breweries that we're talking about because they're going to be focusing on local first before doing anything else. So that's a completely 100%. Different problem to have, I suppose, right?
Yeah, and then just sort of for them, it was sort of like, and then knowing, like looking at distribution and kind of like having sort of a goal in mind, and sort of some kind of content strategy, but like being quite open to things changing. So from that brand approach, like things happen all the time. I mean, like look at what's going on in the world at the moment, and it's sort of like you've got to be pretty adaptable, and kind of like looking too far ahead can sometimes backfire. So yeah, kind of having that nimbleness, and like that's the like wicked advantage of being in a smaller team, is that you have that, and you can kind of act on your feet pretty quickly and then if something does happen where you can tap into a particular, like, say, subsector or culture, then that's something that you can jump on.
Yeah. And again, it comes we keep on full circling this, but if you are truly passionate about that subsection, you're going to know what's going on. So you're going to be one of the first at the front going, right, okay, this has happened. We need to talk about this. We need to be topical and we need to engage.
Yeah.
This has been a very cool chat, Ollie. I'm wondering, like, can you distill it down for a brewery? And like I say, they don't have a lot of time. They've only got a couple of hours a week, if that, to really start to do something with their brand beyond we're making good liquid. Where do they begin to make this kind of stronger, like, cultural relevance, I suppose, in their area?
Yeah, I mean, I would sort of look at, like, what the values are of the brand, what you as an individual or as a company, as a team, what are you passionate about? And then off of that, how can you then get involved and build out the brand from that passion, and from looking at that from those scenes, like doing it bit by bit and growing out from there.
What does that look like, though? So say you've identified, yes, I'm passionate about, we'll go cycling again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm passionate about cycling. We're going to make a cycling brewery brand. Then you're going, right, okay, you've got to start to map out, like, say, those influential figureheads in scene, what you're going to do with your packaging. Like, do you kind of methodically break it down into all these different columns? Like, practically, how would you apply it?
100%. Yeah. And almost like break it down and going, okay, well, maybe we're bringing out a cycling kit or gear that goes beyond a t-shirt. And, the typical thing that everyone kind of gets, that tries to go, okay, we're going to bring out merch, but make some cool shit. Yeah. And come up with some fun ideas. Because that's what people want. And then, like, why should they care about it? Yeah. If they're a cyclist, like, or like, in this case, like, why should they sort of, like, pick it up and go, like, it should resonate with them, and then they kind of go, okay, well, that bit was great. I'm definitely going to have that after I'm going riding now, and I'm going to tell all my mates about it. Oh, and they've, like, they've just sent me, like, a jersey or whatever it may be, or something that I can use on my bike. That's then, like, it just goes a long way. Yeah,
and I can say I've talked about it before, but it's almost that filter that you can pass everything through. It's like, okay, we need to do merch, but how do you do merch for these people?
Yeah.
Or we need to put something on the back of the can. It's like, well, what do you put on the back of the can for these people? We need to do events. Well, where are these people? It all keeps on coming back to, it just gives you that slightly more nuanced edge in your approach, which just like Liquid Death did, I suppose. But Ollie, where could people, like, find you and talk to you, man? Like, because I could chat to you all day about strategy and, picking your brains and branding, but I feel I would upset other people if they continue to listen for, many hours to come. But where can people find you, bud? Like LinkedIn, Instagram?
Yeah, like LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on there. Ollie Russell Cowan. Feel free to get hold of me on there or on Instagram. And
pick your brains, right?
Pick my brains. Welcome to chat to anyone. Yeah, if I can help. And
amazing, man.
Always up for a chat.
Amazing. Well, Ollie, dude, thank you so much for your time, man. This has been great, and it's so cool to hear the story behind a brand like Liquid Death, because it fills me with joy and excitement when you can go and talk to other breweries and go, yeah, but you could do all of this stuff. It could be so cool and so different. So thank you, mate. Thank you, everyone who has listened in, who's dropped a question into the comments, or even in the future, you are listening in. Again, Tim from the past, thanking you in the future for your earballs, your eyeballs, any other balls that you've presented during this episode. I appreciate it muchly. Stick around. There's going to be plenty more guests coming up on branding and breweries, and I'll see you on the other side, people. Rock on.
Thanks, man.
That's a wrap on this week's episode of Branding for Breweries. If you got something great from it, hit follow, like, and subscribe on your favorite streaming app. Or even better, leave a review, share it with your brewery pals, or get in touch, because I want to chat to you. Rock on!